Hello there, welcome everyone. This is Luciano Oliveira, one more live stream here at Oliveira Lawyers, February the 18th, right after Carnaval. I hope those of you in Brazil had a blast and a lot of fun and in a safe manner and enjoyed Carnaval as much as you could. All right, so let's take a look. If we have already questions here from our participants. As usual, those attending our live stream have a priority in terms of asking questions and commenting during Carnival. All right, Teddy Roosevelt. Hi, Luciano. I asked an error last time. If I already own property in Brazil and I sell it, is there a grace period where you don't have to pay ITBI, property transfer tax, for a new property purchase? So, Terry, the ITBI, you're going to pay the ITBI no matter what, okay? The ITBI is the property transfer tax. So whenever you're buying a property, you are unable to buy a property without paying the transfer tax, okay? There is, as a resident, if you're selling the property, the only thing you can kind of roll over, or let's say there is a grace period, is going to be for you to collect capital gains, right? That's the only thing that you're going to be able to either roll over or have a grace period. Again, this is going to be taxes on capital gains. But the ITBI, there is no grace period, there is no exception. It does not matter if you have a property already, if you sold and you're buying a new one, you gotta pay the ITBI every single time that you buy a new property. DB Hodler, good afternoon, Luciano. Welcome back, DB. Once I have a Brazilian residency and I open a bank account, will the process be simple to transfer money from my U.S. bank account to my Brazilian bank account? So, for amounts up to 10,000 US dollars, you better off using Wise. Okay, Wise, it was previously was TransferWise, nowadays is just Wise, and it works pretty well for Brazil. So for amounts of up to 10,000 US dollars, my recommendation is for you to use Wise, okay? Wise is going to charge you a spread, okay? That's the technical term. That's the compensation for the transaction. Wise is going to charge you roughly 0.8% spread. Now, if you send your money from your bank in the US, let's say if you have a bank account with Chase, and if you wire this money into your Brazilian bank account, the spread is going to be roughly 3.5 to 4%. So you're going to be paying potentially five times more by doing a bank-to-bank transfer, okay? So it would be pretty simple. You're going to use Wise. Wise is going to, receive the funds from your U.S. account, is going to handle the currency exchange, and then is going to make a local, domestic deposit into your Brazilian bank account, okay? That's my recommendation for lower amounts. Now, if you're gonna buy a real estate property, then you're gonna be better off sending the funds directly to the seller, because then you can use a currency exchange bank that's gonna charge you roughly 2% spread instead of the 3.5 or 4% that everyday commercial banks are gonna use in Brazil, okay? And if you ask, well, all right, what about Wise? So Wise, as I told you, Wise is going to be good for amounts of up to $10,000. I know that they say they can send any type of money, but the reality is once you cross the 10,000 threshold, they are going to actually outsource your transaction to another bank. in the past, they have used Banco Rendimento, which is a separate entity, but they have been working with Wise under a kind of joint venture approach. And so they are going to be basically handling the procedures with you. And my problem with this approach is that usually there is a lot of disconnection between Wise customer service and the actual bank handling the currency exchange, all right? So in my opinion, you're good to use Wise for up to 10,000 US dollars. For over this amount, my recommendation is that you do not use Wise. WS, I think, Bill. Hello, Luciano. I hope you are enjoying Carnaval. All right. Yes, I did have a really nice break. Thank you, Bill. Are there any advantages to get a retirement visa if one is seriously thinking about living in Brazil? Would it be wise to open a bank account before one moves? Bill, yeah, all right. So I still remember, Bill. So the thing is, for you to open a bank account, usually if you are opening the bank account before you move into Brazil, you're going to be open a non-resident bank account, okay? So if anyone wants to open a bank account even before getting to Brazil, you're going to need to settle for less. The so-called non-resident bank account can be opened with Banco do Brasil Americas, which is the Banco do Brasil subsidiary in the U.S., and you're going to pay, I don't know, they charge a lot. They try to even assess how much you're going to be willing to pay to charge you as much as they can. There are people paying for a non-resident bank account in Brazil roughly like $60 a month. There are people paying $300 a month, which is crazy, right? And these bank accounts, they have a lot of limitations because they are not a regular bank account. So usually my recommendation is for you to first, you secure the resident visa, right? Like in your case, you're talking about the retirement visa. Once you have the retirement visa, then you can basically open a bank account in any bank in Brazil. I particularly like Banco Itaú. Okay, Banco Itaú is a great bank. They have an amazing internet banking platform where you can handle, like from your regular bank account to credit cards and a bunch of other things. They are pretty generous in terms of giving you a credit, like if you need, not a loan, like if you need, like in Brazil, we have something called cheque especial. And cheque especial, it basically means like if you spend more than what you have in your account, they are going to cover the extra amount that you spent and you don't have, and you have up to 10 days to pay this amount to the bank, and they are not going to charge you a penalty, right? Like in the US, Chase Bank has something similar. I think it's overdraft protection, what they call. And if you use it, I think you pay like $35 US or $40 per transaction. So let's say if you are counting on a certain payment, you don't receive the payment, and you have like 6 transactions paid under the so-called overdraft protection, potentially you could be paying like a couple of $100s, right? So Banco Itaú, on the other hand, they give you this thing, basically for free, as long as you don't cross. Like I think it's 10 days per month. So I think it's a pretty decent bank in terms of credit as well. Like if you need the credit, once you develop a relationship with Banco do Brasil, they also give you credit. Okay, so that would be my recommendation for you, Bill, to first secure the retirement visa and only then get the bank account, because then you're going to be able to get any of those banks working with you with the RNM card. DB Hodler, also Itaú has private bank location in the US available for Brazilian residents and citizens. Is this an advantage to open Itaú account here to simplify the transfer process? Right, so just like I was telling about Banco do Brasil, Itaú indeed has like the private banking locations in the US, but there is no such a thing. Sometimes it gives an impression like, all right, because the bank is in Brazil and the bank is in the US, I'm going to be basically making a transfer inside the same bank. But that's not how it works. They are separate entities, although, related within the same family, the same economic group, but they are not the same bank. Okay, so when you make a transfer from Itaú in the US to Itaú in Brazil, you would still have some level of compliance to be handled, right? And the level of compliance that you're going to need to handle is going to depend on the transaction, on the underlying transaction. If you are simply sending money to yourself, like 20, 30,000 US dollars, Banco do Itaú will most probably make your life easy. But if you're buying, for instance, real estate, like if you're sending a large amount of money, it does not matter that you're sending from Itaú to Itaú, you're still going to have to present a bunch of documents, okay? I hope that helps, DB. Terry Roswell, if I marry a Brazilian citizen who lives outside Brazil, can I still get permanent residency or citizenship through marriage? What if I get divorced? Does that affect the residency citizenship? So two questions here, right, Terry? The first one, the answer regarding living abroad. So Brazil, first thing, Brazil does not offer citizenship to spouses of a Brazilian citizen right away. You need to first secure a permanent residency. Okay, so some people sometimes they contact us and they say, well, my wife, she's Brazilian, I want to get the Brazilian passport, right? Like there is no such a thing. What you can do is to secure residency in Brazil, and then through the residency, you're going to eventually get a citizenship. But there is no such a thing as applying for citizenship directly before going through a physical residency in Brazil. So if your spouse is living abroad, in other words, your spouse is not in Brazil, you cannot secure the permanent residency, because the permanent residency, just like in other countries, it's meant for people who want to live in the country. Okay, so permanent residence citizenship is not like a portable benefit. You cannot just go there and say, well, here I am, I'm married to a Brazilian citizen, and nothing, makes more sense than getting me this benefit. So that's not how it works. Your Brazilian spouse should be living in Brazil at the time of application, and through that path, you're going to secure the permanent residency first, and later on, you're going to be able eventually to apply for citizenship. Actually, under what we call the fast track, because you are married to a Brazilian citizen, you can actually apply for citizenship after a single year of residency in Brazil. Okay. The second question: what if I get divorced? Does that affect the residency citizenship? Yes, it could affect, because the residency is based on marriage. So usually the way it works is like if you get divorced right after securing the permanent residency, and by the way, that's probably the reason why Brazil does not call permanent residency. The technical term is por prazo indeterminado, and the translation for that would be undetermined, meaning that you get the residency, but there is no time limit. But the reason for saying there is no time limit but it's not permanent is exactly to be able to take this away from you. Let's say if you divorce right after securing the residency, right? Now, if you've been living in Brazil for 5 years or 10 years, most probably than not, the Brazilian immigration is not going to take away your residency, right? Particularly if you have the RNM card showing no expiration date for your card, you could potentially live in Brazil forever. All right, Michael Solsek, welcome back, Michael. Hello, Luciano. Is it possible to combine the golden visa with being married to a Brazilian? This way you could get citizenship without physical presence in Brazil. Right, so there are two separate requirements, right? Like one requirement is for the residency. So for the residency, again, the idea is that you are residing in Brazil, and for the citizenship, you need to stay in Brazil for a certain amount of time. Okay, golden visa. For the golden visa, you apply for the golden visa, and you need to stay 2 weeks for every you need to stay 14 days or 2 weeks for every couple of years for the first 4 years, and then you can get the permanent residency or the undefined term residency, right? And so this is for the residency itself. On the marriage side, you could potentially get the undefined or the permanent residency from the get-go, right? And the difference between the golden visa and the marriage route when it comes to citizenship is that the marriage route is going to allow you to apply in a single year of residency in Brazil, while there is no such fast track for the golden visa, right? So the golden visa, the fastest you could get the citizenship is going to be 4 years, right? And actually, it could be even more depending on the interpretation from the immigration at the time of application. Nowadays, most of the immigration firms, they say you can get citizenship in Brazil after just 4 years of residency in Brazil. You buy the property, you get the so-called golden visa. 4 years down the road, you could potentially apply for the citizenship. However, there is a more narrowly interpreted approach to citizenship that says that you could actually need to wait 8 years to apply for the citizenship. And the reason for this more conservative interpretation is that when you buy a property in Brazil and you get the golden visa, you actually get like the so-called temporary residency. And when you read the conditions for one to apply for citizenship in Brazil, is that you are actually living in Brazil as a permanent resident, not a temporary resident. Okay, so there are those two interpretations, but in our firm we say, listen, you've been in Brazil for 4 years, let's take a shot, and most probably than not you're going to secure the citizenship, and if it doesn't work, you need to wait for an additional 4 years, and then for sure you're going to get the citizenship. Copper Giraffe, welcome back. Do you accept cryptocurrencies as a source of payment for your services? Since doing so would be less of a hassle. Thanks for the response. Because like legal services, they are kind of supervised by like the bar associations in both the U.S. and Brazil. We try to be as conservative as possible in terms of how we are paid. So unfortunately, we do not work with cryptocurrencies. We don't work with cryptocurrencies, but thank you for asking. If how to pay is a concern for you, send us an email and we try to figure something out to bring you on board. All right, you've been here with us for so many live streams. So we certainly want to have you on board for the services as well. Please send us an email and we're going to work something out. Donna, welcome back, Donna. Good day. Do I need to apostille my driver's license also? No, Donna, you don't need your driver's license for both real estate transactions and immigration procedures. Your passport is going to be the commanding identification for you, followed by the birth certificate, right? Don't forget, the Brazilian government, our legal system in general, loves a birth certificate. So first document is going to be your passport. Second one is going to be your birth certificate, okay? Driver license, like if you're planning to stay for a while, some people, they are going to use the driver license from another country to drive in Brazil. And the idea is that, like for the first year when you are in Brazil, police officers, they are going to be very lenient in terms of accepting whatever you're going to show. It's not going to make much of a difference if you're showing like an apostille, a copy of your driver license, if you're going to show a sworn translation, as long as they see the thing and the thing looks legit and it's not expired, you're not going to have a hard time in terms of both driving and also renting cars in Brazil using your foreign driver license. Now, if you get a resident card and then like 3 or 4 years down the road, you are still driving without a Brazilian driver license, in this case, of course, there would be a different situation. Terry Roswell, thanks, Luciano. Is there any minimum proof of funds or income required to get residency via the marriage route? That's an interesting question. They do ask for proof of income, but there is no minimum requirement written anywhere. We never saw a minimum requirement, but for every single residency application we get approved in Brazil, there's going to be proof of income, all right? So the idea here, I don't think it is to actually enforce a minimum requirement. Is more to have evidence that this foreign citizen about to become a permanent resident is not going to be a burden for the state, right? So from this perspective, if you're presenting like a 500 US dollars a month source of income, I feel confident that you would be approved anyway. $500 a month, of course, it's a low amount. But the idea here, again, is to make sure that you're not coming like without any sources of funds to Brazil to become a burden for the country. Michael Sosak, is there a language requirement for the Golden Visa? No, there is no language requirement. You don't need to speak a single word in Portuguese. You're going to get the first 4 years. Again, it's going to be a temporary residency. After that, you get the so-called undefined or undetermined term residency, which is kind of similar to a permanent residency. And the language requirement is going to kick in only if you are applying for the citizenship. For the citizenship, yes, you must have a somewhat conversational level of Portuguese. I say somewhat because it's not like super fluent. Nobody's expecting you, like to make a speech in Portuguese. The idea is that you're going to be able to understand basic questions and to reply such basic questions in an intelligent manner, right? That's the kind of minimum requirement for the language, but the requirement is for the citizenship application and not for the residency application. Cooper Giraffe, since the approval of the Viper required the consulate of the home country to approve, What would happen if the consulate does not agree with the decision that was made in Brazil? That's correct. So for other people watching our live stream, when you are applying for the Viper, and the Viper or Golden Visa or Brazil investment visa, they are all the same thing. So if you are applying for the Viper, the way it works is we need to get the approval in Brazil through the Ministério de Relações Exteriores, right, or the Foreign Affairs Ministry. This is going to be the entity approving the Viper or Golden Visa. After we get this approval, we're going to send your paperwork abroad. We're going to send the paperwork to the consulate or embassy in charge of your address abroad. And then you're going to need to attend an interview at such consulate or embassy to have the visa stamped on your passport. And the idea here is that, like, the ministry in Brazil, they have a somewhat good understanding of the application, of the requirements, particularly because it's based on investment in Brazil. So it wouldn't make sense for the consulate to make such analysis. So the analysis is done in Brazil, but the actual visa stamping is done abroad. It's more like a technical nuance, but visas, they are never issued in Brazil. They gotta be issued abroad, right? And in Brazil, we actually have residencies and not visas. But this is more like a technical nuance, still like in our daily conversations with clients, we're going to say, well, you can get like a digital nomad visa issued in Brazil, because we don't need to explain, or we don't want to waste your time as a client explaining that actually is not a digital nomad visa, is actually a digital nomad residency, right? But for you, who are learning about Brazilian immigration, there is such a distinction. Visas are issued exclusively abroad. And in Brazil, there is no issuance of a visa. There is issuance of a residency. So because of this distinction for the Viper visa or the Golden Visa or the Brazil real estate investment visa, you first get a visa abroad at a consulate, and then you have a third stage, which is like the registration in Brazil. So just recapping, first, the review of the application is done in Brazil. You get a thumbs up, you get the visa approval in Brazil. Then we need to send this paperwork abroad to the consulate in charge of your address in your country of residency. And then this consulate is going to interview to make sure that this is actually a legit application. They are going to be basically reviewing the papers and asking you a few questions. Most probably they're not. They're going to, just rubber stamp your passport, and then you can move to Brazil to have the registration done, and then you're going to secure the residency upon registration at Polícia Federal. So you see, it's a visa, but then once you register in Brazil, it becomes a residency. These are more like technical aspects of the visa and the residency, but I'm explaining here for you guys who have been attending so many lives. I think you're starting to get a pretty solid understanding of these Brazilian immigration routes. So I think this information would make sense at this stage. Now, Cooper Giraffe's question is like, what about if the consulate does not agree? If the consulate does not agree, you're not gonna get the visa, and you're not gonna get the residency later on. Now, this said, we have dozens and dozens of Viper Golden Visa approved, and all of them, they were issued. We issued abroad without a glitch. We never had such circumstances before. In theory, this is possible, right? Because like if the consulate realizes something, like in the process was, was fraudulent, like in theory, they could just say, listen, I'm not going to issue this visa, and they would have the last word. But again, we never had such situation here. at the firm. Like there were situations in which the visa wasn't approved in the first place in Brazil because, for instance, the person sent money through Wise, right? Like, I mean, the person sent, I don't know, 100 transfers through Wise, and there is no currency exchange agreement to show that the money was sent to buy real estate. So, such transactions would not qualify. And we had clients coming to us after buying the property, that because they didn't do the transaction correctly, they were not approved. Okay, but for all the clients who bought the property with us and then had the application done, none of them would ever had like the visa denied at the consulate level. All right, so I think again the question makes sense. Theoretically, the consulate could deny issuing the visa, but we never had such situation. DB holder, all right, 3 or 4 years down the road. All right. So it looks like you are a planner, right? Like you're planning ahead of time. That's pretty good, DB. Terry, do the retirement visa income documents need to officially state that it is a retirement or pension account? If the account doesn't earn $2,000 a month, can rental income from property be included? All right, let me start with the easy one. Yes, absolutely. If you're making, I don't know, like 1,000 US dollars, 1,200, 1,500, absolutely. You can use rental income. You can use, I don't know, like stocks. If you have like a Vanguard portfolio, if you have some funds, whatever you have, you can use it to complement your retirement income. Now, regarding the retirement income, yes, the retirement income must have some kind of name or label that's going to support the retirement nature of your income. So there are different types of income that would qualify as retirement. It could be, Social Security. Of course, that's the more traditional one. There are pensions being paid by, for instance, like if you work in California is pretty big in pensions being provided by the government or by large employers. There are even like 401ks, the RIAs. This is still pretty traditional as a retirement, but something that is not as traditional is going to be the annuities, right? Like annuities, it's something that could be issued, for instance, by New York Life, for instance, right? Like, New York Life is a life insurance company, and there are, I don't know, literally hundreds of players in the annuity segment, and pretty much any annuity that's going to pay you consistently $1,000 or $2,000 a month could be used for this purpose. Just remember, if you don't have the $2,000 a month, you should have, in my opinion, at least half the income of the retirement type. So let's say if you have annuities for $1,000, and then the remaining $1,000 you could meet with like property rentals, right? It could be again stocks. It could be like investment funds, and so on. Like we can be very creative to help you meet the $2,000 requirement. All right, GB holder, about your comment of driving 3 or 4 years without Brazil license. Yes, I know it sounds even funny, right, GB? And yes, but I've seen that happening before, so that's why I wasn't even joking. It is more like an observation of prior cases, right? The person starts to drive in Brazil. They drive for 6 months. They drive for a year. And when they reach this 1 year, it looks like instead of thinking, well, I've been doing that for a year. I better, take care of this thing. They think the opposite. They say, you know what? I've been doing that for a year. It probably means I can do it forever, right? So people have this kind of backwards interpretation of what's going on. The idea is, like you can drive for a few months up to a year. I think it makes sense. But after that, yes, you need to secure the Brazilian driver license and not to conclude that you're going to be able to use your foreign driver license forever. Okay, but yes, DB, that was a good note. WS Bill, everyone should check out your website. There is a lot of good info here. Thank you so much, Bill. That's true. Like we put some information out there that nobody does. There is a very good resource for any of you considering residency by marriage. If you just go to our website and you search for marriage, you're gonna find our page about permanent residency by marriage. And then if you go all the way down to the bottom of the page, there's gonna be a checklist. This checklist, believe it or not, that's the same checklist that our analysts are going to use for your application. Okay, that's the same checklist. The only difference is that we actually have a version on Monday.com. We use Monday.com to actually manage your application. But the requirements you see on the checklist that we have in our website for you to download for free, it matches 100% the checklist that we have on Monday.com. Okay, so just by printing out this checklist, you're gonna know exactly what you're gonna need to secure the permanent residency, right? Like there is one question that was asked today, like what about if my Brazilian spouse lives abroad, right? So if you take a look at our checklist, you're gonna see that, listen, like the applicant must be in Brazil, right? Must be in Brazil. And another aspect of it is that one of the requirements is actually an affidavit under the penalty of perjury that you live in Brazil, right? So if you're living abroad, and if you're not going to sign something like that, right? Like I hope you're not going to do it. All right, Keith. Hey, Keith, welcome back, Keith. Hi, Luciano. If an American with pre-existing medical conditions living in Brazil with the golden or retirement visa, do they need private care or is public care okay? Does he care when applying? Right, so there is a distinction in here. Like the retirement visa, like the golden visa, there is a single route. The application must be done in Brazil. There is no application done at the consulate. So the first application for the golden is done in Brazil. We get you the approval, and then we send the paperwork to a consulate. At the consulate, you get the visa, and then you register in Brazil. It's a three-stage thing, right? The retirement visa, on the other hand, you could do 100% in Brazil. So you could travel to Brazil. Let's say if you're traveling after April the 10th, you're going to get the e-visa. And by the way, we are assisting people as you speak apply for the e-visa. It's pretty affordable. Everything is done online. You don't need to go anywhere. And you get your visa by PDF. So let's say you get the e-visa kit, you travel to Brazil, you arrive in Brazil, you do like a tryout, like you try Brazil, you like Brazil, say yes, it's 2 months down the road, I want to continue to stay here, now I'm gonna move with the retirement visa. So at that point, you can actually apply in Brazil and register in Brazil, and you don't need to leave Brazil anymore, right? So everything is done in Brazil. And if you're doing in Brazil, the good news is that you're not gonna need to show any type of health insurance. However, there is also an option for you to apply for the retirement visa from abroad. So let's say if you live in New York, there is the Consulate of Brazil in New York. You could potentially apply for the retirement visa through the consulate. But a major downside is that they are going to not only ask you for private health insurance, but they are also review your insurance to see if this thing is going to cover services in Brazil. And some people, they're going to say, well, but I could basically just buy, some travel insurance. It's going to cover, I don't know, like up to $100,000 per, I don't know, like incident, or, if I have a heart attack, they are going to cover the hospital and so on. The Brazilian consulates, they are not looking for travel insurance. They are going to want to see health insurance, which is pretty different. Health insurance is something more like, consistent over time, meaning like you could have not only coverage in case of emergency, but equally important, you would have a coverage for preventive healthcare. Okay, so that's the main distinction between health insurance and travel insurance. So if you're applying abroad, like in the US or any other country, the consulate is going to ask you for health insurance covering Brazil specifically. So they're going to review, and you got to provide, of course, like the service terms for your health insurance, and you gotta allow the consulate to believe or to reach the conclusion that you're going to have a coverage in Brazil. Now, if you apply in Brazil, you don't need to show that, and then you're going to ask me, all right, but don't I still need, like have insurance? Like it's a retirement visa, right? Like meaning I need to be protected. I need to have, my health being taken care of, right? Which I agree 100%. But the good news is that once you get the RNM card, then you are able to secure the same health insurance that we as Brazilians have in Brazil. Okay, and this is a major distinction, because if you are in the US, in my example, like you are in New York, and so you know what, I really want to apply through the consulate, so I'm going to be basically buying some health insurance remotely, and let me see, this health insurance says it's good in Brazil. In my experience, I can tell you that absolutely none of the real health insurance plans in Brazil is going to take a foreign citizen aboard before this foreign citizen gets the RNM card. So if you buy when you are in New York, you're going to end up buying health insurance from second grade, for like second grade providers who are going to provide you basically with a paperwork for you to get the visa. But once you are in Brazil and you try to use this health insurance, unfortunately, it's not going to be accepted in most places. And then you're going to need to chase the provider for reimbursement of the monies that you're going to need to pay out of pocket. All right, so this is the idea. For the retirement visa, you file in Brazil, you get their name card, and then you buy, a pretty good health insurance for not much. There you go. Terry Roswell, for the retirement visa, if I am 50 years old and I have an annuity paying out $2,000 a month for the next 20 years, is that sufficient? What about if it will run out after 10 years? A very interesting question, Terry. The Brazilian immigration, they want to see something forever, right? That's the concept of retirement. If you have an annuity that is going to, be consumed, that is going to be used up completely in the next 20 years, in theory, this thing would not qualify as retirement income. Because the retirement income is supposed to be for the remainder of your life. And that will become, Terry, more of a practical question because if you think about it, the Brazilian immigration analysts is like they are, like they are working on a large number of applications, and they are gonna scheme the document, right? And they are gonna try to see, all right, this is an annuity. My boss, my supervisor told me it is acceptable. And then he's taking a look at it, and all of a sudden there is this information that this thing is good for just the next 20 years. And then it's going to be a matter if this analyst is going to realize that this thing is not like forever. And if he does realize, if he's going to, take the initiative of saying, you know what, this thing does not look like retirement. I'm gonna decline this proof of retirement fund. But this is going to be a more of a practical question than anything else. In my understanding, in my experience, like the Brazilian immigration analysts, they are not like, super, detail oriented. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you would be approved with a $2,000 a month annuity that would expire in 20 years. Okay, if I had to guess, I would guess you're still gonna get it, but at the same time, it's not guaranteed. Like if they realize this thing is not for forever, they could very well say, listen, this does not qualify, and just like to bring some level of peace of mind. Usually they do not deny your application outright. They are going to let us know. They are going to say, listen, you as the law firm representing this applicant, there is a problem with this application. Like, the proof of retirement funds is not acceptable because of that, right? So they would give you an opportunity to satisfy. Of course, like you would need to have a plan B, but that's a more of a practical question. And from a legal perspective, the idea is that the funds are not going to run out eventually. Cooper Giraffe, thank you for the continued response. I greatly appreciate. God bless you and your family always. I really appreciate your participation, Cooper. Always good questions. And as I say, without you guys, this live stream would not make any sense, right? Like, I mean, this is in place for you guys, so I thank you for your participation as well. Kitwell, entendi, grato, de nada, Kit, sempre ao seu dispor. Terry Roswell, thanks, Luciano. After 10 years, our normal pension starts here anyway, so the annuity only needs to run until then, okay? Right, so I see what you're saying, Terry. So you want to satisfy the requirement by, let's say, tackling, right? Like, or, having like a continued plan for your retirement. But the analysts, they are not going to go that far in terms of, understanding, all right, like he's going to have this income for 20 years. And in the meantime, the real one is going to, is going to kick in. Therefore, he's not going to be without qualifying retirement income. Terry, I don't think the analysts are going to go that far in terms of, reasoning or trying to understand that you are meeting the requirements. Their analysis is more like a static instead of a dynamic type of interpretation of your specifics. So the idea is that at the time of application, you should meet the requirements. Now, if that would preclude you from applying, my suggestion is that for you to just apply. Like I said, there is a substantial chance they would basically just accept as it is without even thinking about the 20 years, right? Like, you remember, the analysts is like they have, of course, they are able to read in English. And by the way, you're going to need to provide the paperwork translated into Portuguese as well. Still, I think there is a chance they are just gonna overlook the 20 years, and they are gonna approve. They are gonna approve your application, right? But that's a hunch. Like nobody's gonna guarantee. But my suggestion is that you just present as much as you can, Terry, and present, and really try the application. Okay. K2L, for the retirement visa, can a married couple each get a visa and each be pulling from the same accounts? So $2,000 a month, not $4,000. No, Katie, it gotta be $2,000 a month for each, right? And I would assume you're talking about a retirement account or funds that are going to be on both names. One alternative over here, it would be like if you have separate social security, right? So let's say if one applicant has $1,000 and the other applicant has $1,000 in social security or some type of pension, so the 2,000 would work to complement, to help you get to the 2,000 each. But it also depends. It's also a matter of a practical question, because when the analyst looks at it, right? When the analyst looks at it, the analyst is not going to be reviewing both applications at the same time. So there is a chance, particularly if such account is issued and it's showing only the name of one applicant, the analyst, no question about, he would use the entire $2,000 a month for the applicant at hand, right? Even if you have both names on the document, but the analyst is handling a single application, there would still it would still be possible that the analyst would be satisfied with the $2,000 a month, but not guaranteed. Again, it's a practical question. He's going to be looking at it. He's going to see two names, right? And he's going to probably ask the same question. And I've seen that happening before. I can see between the lines, like Brazilian immigration, the analysts, they are usually trying to help people out. I think it's part of our culture, right? Like if they can turn a blind eye and help you get the retirement visa, they are usually gonna do so, right? Unless it is something clearly not acceptable. Unless it's something clearly not acceptable, they are gonna try to err on your favor. Okay, so again, I wouldn't preclude you from applying and trying to get this thing approved. Terry Roswell, thanks Luciano, much appreciated. All your answers and recommendations. I am planning to arrive in Brazil in November. When do you recommend starting the process for retirement visa? We usually recommend you to start the process at least a couple of months up front, right? So if you are planning, let's say November the 1st, so, like I would say the end of August, like, you could be contacting us to prepare the paperwork. So September, we get started, right? In September, then we have September and October to work on your application. And then once you arrive in November, we kind of have the approval for you. And then, you don't need to spend more than a month in Brazil without the RNM card. Because just like we discussed it today, without the RNM card, like you cannot have like a bank account. Even for you, let's say if you're going to rent a property, to rent a property without the RNM is usually a pain in the neck. You're going to be paying much more than someone with RNM would be, right? Because it's always a matter of risk and how to put this risk in currency terms, right? So if you're trying to rent something with a passport and you pay enough money for the landlord, to basically overcome this concern, it means that because you don't have the RNM, you're going to be overpaying for your property, right? So some people, they say, you know what, like I'm going to go to Brazil once I'm here in Brazil, then I'm going to start to handle this application, but then this is going to, you're going to get your RNM card probably 3 or 4 months down the road. And in the meantime, you are in this kind of limbo because you don't have the RNM card, right? So my recommendation, Terry, is for you to get started with the paperwork to retain our services. In August, the 20th, 21st, 22nd, so we can get started in September and get you the approval right after you arrive in Brazil. WS, meaning Bill. Luciano, is it better in Brazil as far as Lula versus Bolsonaro? Yeah, this is a very interesting question. I think, just like in the United States, there is so much polarization, right? And if you think about like each of those two presidents, they have very different perspectives. But I believe both of them, they wanna do something good for Brazil. So during Bolsonaro's administration, the immigration itself, I mean, the framework, all of those things we are talking about today, they came from the Bolsonaro administration. So before Bolsonaro, the visas were, a few visas. They were mostly related to work or, to family relations, like something very old. And Bolsonaro brought a lot of, innovation and modernization across the board. So it wasn't just like for immigration, but it was for currency exchange. It was for, the financial markets. There is no, area in Brazil that Bolsonaro was not trying to improve, right? But just like President Trump, he was sometimes very harsh and would say things that he should not have said that really offended a lot of people. And I think if it wasn't for that, like Bolsonaro would be our president as we speak. But it is what it is, right? Whatever he did, it was his choice. So I understand why Lula won, right? Now, President Lula, he also has his own ideas about how to conduct the country. He has this idea of getting Brazil in the same level of major countries like the U.S., like France, like Germany, like Japan, and he does do a good job in terms of raising the national self-esteem, I would say, right? But one thing that I wish he would be less conspicuous in the Lula's administration is like the ideology, because ideology is usually going to come first before practical or more rational basis policies. But that's something that it looks like the Brazilian people wanted to have, right? Like more ideology than technical people at the government. So we need to work with what we got, and of course we wish President Lula to have a successful administration. Brazil is doing well, from so many indicators, right? And I think it's a very unique country, right? We have one of the largest economies in the world. Like we have a super friendly people. Brazil has natural beauties. It's a very peaceful country, at least from a a global perspective, right? Like, unfortunately, in practical terms, like daily, it's undeniable that we have a level of criminality that is above what we should have. So there is no denial in there. But yes, Bill, I think that helps. That's my perspective on Lula and Bolsonaro. Kitwell, is there a requirement for whom does the translation to Portuguese? Portuguese, for example, I know a Brazilian living here that translates for legal cases and in deposition, or does it need to be done there? Yeah, Keith. So it cannot be done in the US. Like, it gotta be done by a sworn translator. In Portuguese, we call tradutor juramentado. It means they gotta be actually residents in Brazil. And in addition to that, they pass like a public examination. So to be a sworn translator, first you need to reside in Brazil. The second thing, you need to pass a very tough, public examination. So I trust the Brazilian that working on legal cases and depositions. It's probably a super qualified translator, but he does not meet the requirements existing for such translation to be acceptable in Brazil. Okay, Kit? All right, final question. We are arriving at the end of our live stream for today. Terry, thanks again, Luciano. I have put a reminder in my schedule to engage you in mid-August. Thank you so much, Terry. It's going to be a pleasure. Thanks again for the great content in the live chats. I have found very valuable. Thank you so much, Terry. You guys are the reason for us to make this live stream. And for as long as you guys are coming, we're going to have more live streams. Our next live stream is going to be on Wednesday. And I hope you can go to YouTube and click on Notify Me. If you click on Notify Me, you're not going to forget, because YouTube is going to send you a reminder. So about 10 minutes before the live stream, you can basically just come here to our channel and talk to us and other expats, other people interested in Brazil, and you're going to be very welcome as usual. So again, February the 21st, and on Wednesdays we meet at 12:30. Okay, so it's right around lunchtime for those who are in Brazil. See you then, and you guys have a blessed rest of your Sunday. See you on Wednesday.